I'm Suzy.
And I'm Lisa, and this is the Coaching Cast. We are the No Nonsense podcast, chatting about the things impacting you at work right now, helping you to survive and thrive in today's workplace.
We discuss different topics in each episode, sharing our ideas, hints, and top tips from our experiences of working in the corporate world, running our own businesses, and also being qualified coaches. We also try to have a few laughs along the way too, because, well, taking yourself too seriously, it's just boring. We hope you enjoy listening. In today's episode, we are discussing people pleasing, the classic habit of saying yes to everything, bending over backwards and constantly putting others' needs first. We're going to get real about this habit that many of us struggle with, myself included, and offer our top tips for breaking the people-pleasing cycle. So stay with us and enjoy. So Lisa, before we get into today's episode, how have you been?
Sleep deprived.
Oh, bold start, like that, straight in.
Yeah, sleep deprived.
Okay, tell me more.
So the month of September, which by the time this episode comes out, we will have just passed. Let's hope things have improved for me, listeners, but I'm not out of my breath. Has just been a roller coaster of terrible sleep, thanks to my gorgeous, darling husband, who is Dominic, aka the Snore Monster.
Oh,
bloody hell, it's killing me, absolutely killing me. If it's not him, it's the dog who's now sleeping with us because of his old age and his disability. So yes, between the two of them, if it's not Alfie the dog rolling around, sorting himself out, he's snoring, he barks in his sleep, so that's always enjoyable. It's Dom the husband who's snoring like a pig. So yes, I am feeling incredibly sleep deprived. So I don't know, listeners, if anyone's got any. I'll take your offers of sympathy and empathy for a start, because I'm sure I'm not alone in this challenge. But if anyone has got any top tips themselves that they want to share back to me about how to address a problematic partner who snores aggressively every time they're asleep, I'll take it. I'll take all the tips, advice. At the moment, the solution I'm taking, which I don't believe is conducive to a long and happy marriage, is to sleep in a completely different bedroom. I don't feel like we're there yet. I thought that's what we did when we hit our 80s, if we even get that far together. The fact that we're having to do it at this age, we're both still quite young. Well, I like to think of myself as young. Dom is young. It's just like, come on. I thought we had more years of like being able to enjoy sleeping in the same bed together, but apparently not. So yes,
listen,
you
got to do what you got to do, I say. I'm
sleep deprived. And just, trying to find the energy most days to crack on.
Well, despite my frustrations. It's interesting you mentioned this topic, because I am the problematic partner in this scenario, not because I snore, but because we've heard it on this podcast, haven't we? I have some alarms that keeps my diabetes in check, like my blood sugar levels.
They look after you mean? They look after you.
Yeah. And so they alarm like when my blood sugar hits a certain level. And that obviously can happen day and night. So I am like the problematic partner, but in a different version of Dom, because I can often alarm through the night, definitely, and wake Steve up from time to time. So yeah.
But you see, that keeps you alive. So for me, that's totally acceptable. My husband snoring isn't keeping either of us alive, technically. It's totally unnecessary. It's not like I am perfect. I know I snore too, but I don't snore like he does, which is really loudly and all through the night. I think I have a tendency to sleep at like 5. I start snoring, at like 5 in the morning. It's something weird like that. So actually, really, that's a helpful alarm system, isn't it? So what about yourself, Suze? Please tell me you're getting some good sleep, that you're feeling energized.
Yeah, I'm getting some good sleep, better than yours, I think, from the sounds of it. So yeah, no, all good on that front. Energized, I feel like I should probably be re-listening back to our episode on personal energy, actually,
Me
for
too.
some top tips. Yeah, no, I feel like I feel good. I think we've obviously had a really busy month with like new routines and starting school and new work routine for me. Um, and it's all been really good stuff. But yeah, I've not done a huge amount of kind of topping my battery back up. So
Hmm.
yeah, probably need to kind of take some of my own advice around self-care as we go into autumn and October. But apart from that, feeling good. October is party month as well in our house. There's two birthdays in our house. I know you've just celebrated a birthday in yours as
Oh
well.
God. Yeah. See you later, liver. I need a new one after my husband's birthday shenanigans.
So yeah, kind of a busy couple of weeks coming up, as well on the old birthdays and some big birthdays. My husband's turning 40,
He's
which
joining
is
my club.
cool. Yeah. So we'll see how all of that goes on the next episode. I'm sure I will have some tales of birthday fun. I'll leave that there.
Oh, I can't wait. Listeners,
Oh.
wait in anticipation as we wait to hear. Now, the question for me will be now, how many cakes are there this year? Because
Oh yeah.
if anyone recalls some of our previous episodes that we've
Oh my
recorded this
goodness.
time of year, we've had some hilarious stories from Suzy about the 5 cakes that have arrived for one birthday that they've indulged
I
in. So let's see how many turn up this year.
Oh my gosh, I'd forgotten about that. Oh my God, how many have I ordered? I can't even remember.
Oh God. Okay, the diabetic in the room doesn't know how many cakes she's ordered. Excellent.
Right. I need to check my emails. Let's see how many cakes I've ordered.
Cool. Right. So, should we get cracking into today's episode?
Yeah, once I've checked those cake orders, definitely. Okay, let's start with the basics. What is people pleasing? At its core, people pleasing is when you prioritize making others happy over your own needs, desires, or even your well being. It's that feeling that if you don't please everyone, something will go wrong, whether that's losing approval, getting rejected, or even feeling unworthy in some way. It's not just about personal relationships, it also happens in business and the workplace too. People pleasing can seep into how you manage teams, for example, interact with clients, and make decisions. It's not always about being liked. Sometimes it's about avoiding conflict or discomfort. Interesting, that piece. So, Lisa, how would you describe people pleasing? And also, more importantly, are you a people pleaser?
So, I think it's really interesting, and I think you've touched on this in that introduction about people pleasing and what it is, because I find it really hard to articulate what people pleasing is for me personally, because I would definitely say I have a tendency to be a people pleaser, but I don't know whether I would describe it as either of those descriptions, or maybe it's like a combination of both, like being liked and wanting to avoid conflict. But I think as a offer, and just to keep things simple and moving forwards, I would probably describe it as that element of being liked at all costs. And I say at all costs in respect of at the cost of yourself and actually what you believe is right for you and is true for you in any given moment, as well as at the cost of possibly what is actually the right thing to do for those involved in the environment. And I sort of think about this in terms of when I think for myself, I definitely know that I have a desire to want to be likable. And I think I've always had it. So I think of this, it's so strong for me as a kid and being at school. So both like as early as primary school, I just always wanted to be likable. I wanted
Okay.
to be amenable and likable and for people to talk highly of me. And that included even people I didn't like, is so illogical. So actually, that whole keep your friends close and your enemies closer, that is me. If I really don't like somebody, I am beyond nice to them so that they think I'm really nice. Which is such weird behavior, but it is so true because I feel like I can think ill of them, but they are not allowed to think ill of me because in my mind I'm better than they are. So they have to think I'm fucking great. But I can think they're a
Okay.
twat. But I can think they're a twat, which is just so ridiculous. I don't even understand it myself, that particular trait that I have. But it is
I was
there.
like, I feel that's a coaching session in
Yeah,
itself, a
probably.
series.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I dwell on them. I don't have a hang up about it. Like they don't consume my
Mm.
thought, those that I don't like. But they do have to like me. It's just a really, I don't know whether I've just always had it drummed into me that it's so unattractive to be disliked and that it's not okay to be disliked. And if
Mm.
you're disliked, it's
Interesting.
because you're doing things wrong. So it's a comment on you. And therefore, there is that element of rejection and approval that's going on there for me all the time. Um, so like I actually had this conversation recently with one of my bestest friends, and it was because we were laughing about just little quirks that I have. And she said, "You're the sort of person who crosses the road quickly on a zebra crossing to not upset the driver in the car who's waiting." Because you don't want to upset them or them to think ill of you. And it is so true. It's so true. I am that person. I want a complete and utter stranger who I will never speak to think, oh, that lady's very conscientious. She's crossing the road quickly so I don't have to wait too long. That is me. I don't even
Okay.
understand what that's about. But now, since my best friend Rosie said that to me, I cannot stop thinking about it. And I'm the same. Like it's for some reason, it's always got to do something to do with driving. But it's like if I'm in a car park, and some person's trying to park their car, I will give them as much wide berth as I can as a pedestrian, or I'll move really quickly and like smile at them and wave to say thank you. That's me, and it's just totally weird. And I am doing it because I know it is. There is a consciousness of me going, oh, I want them to think, oh, thank you very much, kind pedestrian. Which
Okay.
is just, but that's so weird. I don't even know what that's about, to be honest. But I do think people pleasing has roots in misunderstanding what being likable is. I think it's like if you're a people pleaser, I think you've got yourself into a space where you've oversimplified and possibly even misunderstood the very like the myriad of ways that you can be a likable person.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like I feel like it's where we just think being likable is all about just being nice. And that's just not true, is it? But that's definitely, I think, where when I think about it, that's where I know I go to. It's just about being nice. But actually, even when I say it, there's nothing cool about being really nice. It's
You're even saying that word a bit differently. No.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
interesting.
you say that you're a people pleaser.
Yeah.
So how
I've
would you
got
describe it?
I've got worse over the last few years,
You've got
definitely.
worse.
Yeah. Um, do you know why? I know why it is. Is because I've got my own business now.
Oh,
And
okay, yeah.
I never, so if someone comes to me with an opportunity or a problem or um like a collaboration or whatever it might be, or a
Hmm.
request, I'm always of the kind of stance in my business that I'll just say yes, as long as I kind of broadly agree with it and think I can help with it. I'm not an ethical in when I say yes, to be clear.
Yeah.
Um, and then I just kind of figure it out later. I'll figure it out. Okay. And I'm really that's really strong for me. Again, going back to our personal values, which we've talked about a lot on this
Hmm.
podcast, and there's a whole 2 episodes on in the back catalogue somewhere, if you're interested. You know, that's quite strong for me, and I think that's got stronger in the last few years because the context that I've been operating in at work with my own business is that I say yes more times than I say no. Um, but that has then really leaned into a space for me where you just touched upon it actually, you oversimplified. Like, and I've oversimplified that response and the meaning I get from that and taken it into all aspects of my life. So I now find it quite hard to say no. What I mean by that, so I'll give you an example, is, I will take more things on, like organizing events for, like, the local preschool, and getting more involved in that than what I'd initially set out to do. I will say yes to things that people will ask me, like, can you do this? And I'll just say, yeah, I'll say yes. And often it is the right thing to do and I can do it. But I have found myself at times just layering more and more yeses up together. And then suddenly I feel overwhelmed. And not always, but I can sometimes find myself, questioning myself, saying, why didn't you just say no to that? And I think deep rooted for a lot of it is because I genuinely want to help people. That's a lot of what I do that's important to me, but also important in my job and my business now. And so I over-index in that. And it kind of in some ways has become an overplayed strength for me.
Yeah.
And then I find myself in certain settings, normally outside of work, it's normally in my personal life, where I want to help them. So I say yes, but I'm afraid of saying no because that doesn't sit well with me anymore, because I'm just so embedded with, like, say yes and we'll figure it out. So I've
Yeah.
got worse. It's like played into some of my personality and some of the traits in that the context is of being having my own business and that approach. I've then oversimplified it, and I've then like really magnified it in all aspects of my life now. I just can't help myself, I'll be honest.
But I think, that is a part of being a people pleaser, is the wanting to help
Yeah,
others. I think it's still interesting to explore, but where does that desire come from? And is it an earnest one? Because I
yeah,
think I'll be honest and say there is a big part of me that wants to help people, yes. But definitely historically, I have done it to get approval. I know I've done it for approval's sake. And that's not really the same thing. There's an element of wanting to help, but there's a lot more there that's about my ego and
yeah.
about wanting to be seen to be helpful,
Yeah.
which is not really the same. So yeah, I do think it's interesting, but I think this is where a lot of us as people pleasers trip up, is that we do it for the right reasons in the general sense, but it can be often, if we don't think about it like clearly enough and think about, is this the right thing for me? That's when it starts to become challenging and it can undo us, I think. And then where we actually create the internal conflict.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, in your experience then of both your corporate career and obviously in your coaching work now, how do you think people pleasing shows up in the workplace? So, like, I've just given an example there
Yeah.
of now running my own business, how that kind of can crop up for me. What examples have you seen of people pleasing cropping up in the workplace?
I think the one that used to grate on me probably the most, and I found the most irritating in others. I
I
actually
know what
don't
you're going to
think
say.
I don't think
I
I was
know what
much
you're
of
going to
I don't think
say.
I was much of a people pleaser myself in work, actually. This is interesting. I actually found saying no very empowering at work. It made me feel powerful and I quite enjoyed it. Because this is where I think, again, I come back to, like, be clear about what likability means for you,
Yeah,
because I think you can say no and still be a likable person. I don't think they are exclusive. I think they are very much part of the same. So actually, what grated on me with people pleasing at work was when people would agree with everyone, when actually it was either the wrong thing to do or actually just very unhelpful and unproductive. And I do think there are a lot of those people in the workplace who are brown nosers, as I would call them, who just like kiss ass to climb the ladder. They're people pleasers. They just say
yeah,
yes to everything and they agree with everyone to be seen to look good and to be agreeable. But it doesn't create a productive, creative, innovative environment if everyone just agrees with everyone. And I think that's what used to grate on me, is when I'd literally see people like huddled together like herds of sheep, all going in a direction that I was just like, this is a terrible idea. And why is no one saying anything about it? Why are we all just acting as though this is the best thing to do? And it clearly is not the only way to do things. And I would argue it's not the better way to do things. And it's not doing things for the right reasons. And I think you do get that in some organisations, and it can be so detrimental, and I think dangerous to the organisation, where everyone's just trying to please each other to keep the peace and to keep things happy. But I'm like, that is at the detriment to the organisation if it's not the right thing to do. I think you also see it a lot in service businesses where you're all about serving the customer, because we can all be guilty of like people pleasing customers, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are paying the bill. But again, I think if you become at mercy to the customer and their whims and don't have the ability to say no, or that's not quite right, or what I'd like to offer instead is, I think that can be quite dangerous as well, because you can just become manipulated by the customer. And I'm sorry, I don't think the customer does know best a lot of the time. I think that's a fallacy. So businesses that are just like slaves to customers, I don't know that, but I think that's what I've seen a lot of, and gone,
Yeah.
you know, what would be better in this instant is actually if you were honest with the customer about what's possible, and then actually we could deliver a really good job. And now we're in danger of doing the absolute opposite and disappointing the customer because we just weren't honest about it. And I think that's where people pleasing can be quite damaging.
Absolutely. I knew what you were going to say in the sense of the brown nose, and in my head I was like, she's going to say that, and I was like, yes, I was
right. You know me well, and we've worked together. Yeah.
For a long time. But also, I would say, for me, in my corporate career especially, I used to find that really irritating when, especially senior leaders, would kind of activate this kind of inauthenticity of not actually kind of going with what they truly thought was right or what they believed. And I get it, there's a system that we're operating in. I get that. And some things you can impact, some things you can't. But you could quite easily tell when somebody was just following the line and they didn't actually truly believe that that was the right thing to do, or the right solution, for example. I've also done that myself. I'll be honest. I'll put my hands up. I think in my corporate career, and also I think maybe this is something that's come with me through age, through understanding myself better, through doing work on myself since I left my corporate career, I've become a lot more confident with saying no. Although I have just said in the other bit that I haven't. But I think I have at work. So I will always try and say like yes and figure out a way. But actually, if I genuinely can't help, or it is too much, or it isn't my area of expertise, or I don't feel right about something, I have got better at following my gut instinct and saying no, but also as well vocalizing my opinion and my view. I think for a long, long time, I wasn't comfortable with expressing how I felt about something and having a viewpoint, and that's probably come through work on myself and allowing myself the approval to value my own opinion more than that of others,
which is such a good point, actually. Like I think that's quite profound in itself, that whole sentence that you've just said, that valuing your opinion as well as others. And I think sometimes that's where we trip ourselves up if we're people pleasers, is that I don't even know if we give ourselves space in our own thoughts as to what we think, because we are so quick to absorb, adopt, or support others' opinions, and we hold that in higher regard than actually what we think, as though we give that power to other people. We put them on that pedestal. We elevate them in that way, but we're not engaging ourselves. And Yeah, I think that's really interesting what you just said there, because I think it's so important to recognize what you think about things. You don't necessarily have to share it if you really truly don't want to. You may not feel comfortable to share. You may
Yeah,
not feel safe
exactly.
to share. Like, I know what we're saying and I'm being flippant about it, but the environment you work in may not be supportive of you feel, being
Yeah,
able to be honest and share what
absolutely.
you think. And actually, it's a coping strategy to just toe the line with everybody else and blend and be amenable. I
Yeah,
don't think it's ever going to do you very good in the long term. And I don't think
yeah,
that's a consistent strategy, like a long-term one in any way. And I think that's where you can end up losing your sense of self and your own
yeah,
identity. And that's going to make you feel shit eventually. I think you'll wake up to it, because I think we all do when we're doing it. Because you're not being your authentic self. And I think that's
yeah.
so important to recognize. But yeah, I think that's really interesting. And you're right, you have to pick your battles. Like, don't get me wrong. I wasn't just like fighting all the time. I'm not like, and most people will probably be listening to this and work with me and go, what is she talking about? She wasn't like that at all. You do have to pick your battles. You do.
You do.
But I think you have to, I think that's what's important always is, what are you consciously choosing to do? Because if you're consciously choosing to align with others for actually the benefit of enabling everyone to move forwards, including yourself, then that's okay. But if you're not even aware you're doing what you're doing,
Mm,
that's not okay.
mm, absolutely. I think this is a topic that's really individual to each and every one of us. I think
Yes,
it
absolutely. Like all things, I guess.
absolutely, but what people pleasing means to you will be, as we've just discussed between the two of us, will mean different things to each of us.
Mm,
And that's okay. It's just about being aware and maybe thinking, oh, what, what does that mean for me right now?
mm,
And how am I demonstrating that? A bit like me, where I became a bit more aware that I was just saying yes to everything in every context of my life.
mm,
And
mm.
then realizing that I have no free, like no downtime, no free
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Anyway, let's move
absolutely.
on. Let's move on. Okay, so we've dug a little bit there into why, people pleasing can be slightly damaging in business or in
Mm.
the workplace. Is there anything else you wanted to add around the slight disadvantages, I suppose?
So, I mean, I mentioned that I think it can be damaging in that I do think it stifles
Yeah.
creativity and innovation. I think it also does erode a sense of trust and openness. And I think you need that to have a really successful, efficient, and effective business. I think the other side that we haven't actually touched upon like in a lot of detail, but I think you've alluded to, is at an individual level. I think it can be damaging to individuals if you're not clear about your boundaries and your capacity. If you say yes to everything to please people, you'll eventually struggle with overwhelm, because you'll just take on too much. And I think, therefore, that can be dangerous, as I said, at an individual level with burnout. And actually, it ends up having the detrimental effect that you wanted it to have. So you probably say yes because you want to be helpful. But the fact is, if you say yes to everyone, you're not going to be able to do everything for everyone. That's not possible. So you end up letting people down. And so you end up doing the opposite of what you intended. The intention was always a good one, but the method has undone that. So
Yeah.
I think that's where it can be quite damaging. And as that's more an individual level, but then that rolls up into a business organization level. Because if
Yeah.
everyone is doing that, again, it's not being efficient, and it's not um, enabling that business to deliver on its promises.
Yeah, such an important point, and one that I should probably listen to and adopt a bit better as moving forward.
I think also as
Okay.
well, if everyone's avoiding having honest conversations, you're not addressing problems.
Hmm.
I think there's this, as I said, like, I do think we can oversimplify what being likable means. And if we all use that term nice, I think that's where we can get into that space of being ruinously empathetic that Kim Scott developed in her radical candor concept. In that, actually, if you see problems and you see issues and you see things, people doing things in a way that isn't quite right, that could be better, but you're just avoiding talking to them because you don't want to be mean, which is,
Yeah,
actually you're just stifling the ability of that person, for one, to be better and to really fulfill their full potential and to do a really bloody great job, as well as the business. And I think, again, it's where we just have this oversimplified notion of what being nice and likable is.
for sure.
You can say no and you can have clear opinions and beliefs, and you can go in your own direction, and you could not really give a shit about what people think, and still be a good person, and you can still be likable. And if anything, you might even be more likable because you're like that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a bit too
Okay.
radical a concept for me, I have to admit. I can't quite be like that. I'd like to be sometimes, but I can't quite be like
I think you've got it in you. I think you can just give it a go, give it a try,
Depends
see what
on how
happens.
much sleep I've had on a day like today. No.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so what are your top tips then for breaking the people pleasing cycle?
Oh gosh, where to start? I think it is to I think this one can go quite deep. I think I want to try and keep these top tips like useful and practical, but I think there's an element here of trying to tap into, if you believe you are a people pleaser, because some of you will be listening and go, this just isn't me. If it
Yeah.
is, that's great. Good for you. Good for you. You can teach us your tricks and hints as to why not to be like this. I think it is tapping into, what is it that you're seeking from others?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, what do you believe your what is sitting behind what you're doing, and possibly why you are saying yes or doing everything that everyone else asks of you? Like, what is it you're seeking from other people? And maybe even in a sense, like, because I do think people pleasing is driven by a fear. It may even be like what you fearful of. So I think that would possibly be my first one, to do a bit of like that self-exploration, just understand what the driver is behind it.
Yeah.
you know for me, like, why do you wave at every person when you cross the road? That is weird.
All friendly.
I mean, I do like to be, but you see, maybe this is it. You see, I want to be thought of as friendly, even by Joe Blogs in his vehicle, who I'll never speak to, but I do want to be seen as friendly. So yeah, that's my major tip. Like, what is behind this for you?
Okay.
And I suppose, in a way, like, what are you getting out of this? Because, like, if you can be really honest with yourself, if you're literally getting nothing and you're honest and realize this is doing you no good, it's probably worth changing it.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, one of my top tips just linked to that is around, do you actually want to do this or not? Like, yes or no?
Yeah, yeah,
Because I think if you genuinely do want to support or do this thing that you've been asked to do or get involved or whatever it is, yeah, then crack on, like do that. That's generally going to make you, back
yeah,
to your question before, like that generally is going to make you happy and feel good and feel satisfied for you, then brilliant.
yeah,
That's it. But
yeah,
if the answer to that is actually no, like, do I generally want to do this? No, I don't. Okay, well then don't do it. And I know that
yeah.
sounds very simple in practice, like in theory,
Yeah,
but in practice, you then got to get comfortable with saying no. And that's the bit for me, I think, where I struggle sometimes is actually verbalizing that no, but doing it in a way that's still friendly, still, informal in a sense, because I'm, all about the informal tone a lot of the time.
yeah, yeah,
That just works for me. And collaborative. So just being like, I'm at capacity right now. I can't help you. But let's, have a conversation about it in a week's time or whatever, because things might have moved on. That's okay. Like you're still saying no, but doing it in a way which is collaborative. Like that's important to me. That might not work for you, but for me, like that's really important.
yeah,
Um, and then we'll reassess and kind of go again. Or it could just be a hard no. Yeah.
yeah,
And it's like a no is a no. And that's cool as well. It does
yeah,
depend on the context.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think you just got to ask yourself that question, like, do I genuinely want to do this or not?
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's definitely that. It's that check in with yourself about like, what do you want to do here in this situation? If you have to do it, it's part of your job, then I think that's different. But I think if you have the choice, and I suppose that's what you need to check in with yourself, because at the moment, if you're just saying yes to everything, you're not even stopping to check that. Do you have
Yeah,
a choice?
exactly.
I do genuinely think people are more accepting of no when they understand it. And if they understand why you're saying no, and they can at least meet you where you are, they appreciate your position, the majority of people I know accept it. I don't. And even if they didn't, that's on them then, because you've explained yourself. You've shared it with them. So you've given them as much as you need to understand it. And if they still choose not to, that's on them. It's not because you haven't
Yeah,
tried to help.
absolutely. I think with all of this, wherever you're at, it's just about practicing. And, I am still a work in progress on this, but
Mm,
I'm not the finished article on this. And what we're saying here is that you don't need to be the finished article. You just got to be true to yourself and think about where you are right now and where you want to get to on this subject and what the gap is and how you're
mm,
going to get there. And, this is definitely something for me that I am still working on and getting more comfortable with. And that's okay.
yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we're going to round up and summarize our top tips later on in the episode.
It's now time for Bullshit Bingo, where we call out phrases which commonly get used in the workplace, which make us cringe. Our Bullshit Bingo for today's episode is quick wins.
Quick wins. I
Quick
love this
wins.
one. Do you
Yeah.
know what? I think I used this one literally a few days ago.
I mean, I think this one, it's a goodie. It's a common one. It slips nicely into the vocab. Quick wins, 100%. I've used this so many times. Quick
Yeah.
wins.
What are the quick wins? Okay, let's get going with them.
Yeah, exactly. Quick wins. I think, yeah, I think as bullshit bingos goes, I suspect most of our listeners will be able to relate to this. And I'm sure most of you listening have used this. I'd be surprised if you haven't. Anyone who's worked in a corporate job, you've used this. You probably heard it yesterday.
Be truthful with yourselves. You
You would have heard it
probably
yesterday.
said it yourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's such a highly like used one, this.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
massively.
yeah, I use this a lot nowadays. I did in my corporate role. There's something about it that's just like, do you know what it is? I think it's the addition of the word quick, because everybody likes things that are like, don't take huge amounts of energy and focus, that we can just kind of sort out, activate really, really quickly and efficiently. So the idea of a win and it being quick with not much like need for, you know, huge energy and focus sounds good to me.
Well, yeah, and let's be honest, it's rare in a corporate environment.
Exactly.
Nothing ever happens quickly in a corporate environment. So yeah, I agree. If anything, it's a false notion.
Oh, oh.
I think we've used quick wins and they still took bloody ages. So it's probably bullshit bingo for that reason. It's just like a quick way to get people on board, even though you know that it's not going to happen. So yes, CBBS. We are down to the dregs when it comes to bullshit bingos. We've had a quiet patch. Fair enough, people. It's been a summer break. We know you've been away and busy. We know you've been looking after the kids, but we need to hear your bullshit bingos because we are dry. So please do drop us a message on our Instagram page when you are next swiping through those reels. Drop us a message on Instagram and let us know your favorite bullshit bingos. Let us know if you've had any new ones. There's got to be some new ones around, for
I
goodness
know, I've not
sake.
had many
What's
new
going on
ones.
in the modern workplace? Equally, LinkedIn, if you see me and Suzy, we're active on there. When you see us posting, please do share with us your bullshit bingos.
Some might
And
say too active.
yeah, hey, look, I've got to show up somewhere. So yeah, please share with us your bullshit bingo so we can keep this feature, i.e., the best part of this podcast, going. Thank you very much.
We are coming to the end of today's episode where we've been discussing the topic of people pleasing. So our top tips and recommendations from today's episode for you to give a try are: number one, really ask yourself, what is the driver behind this? So the action here is to think about what is sitting behind you doing what you're about to go and do. So what are you fearful of? What are you seeking from other people? So just kind of stop, pause, and ask yourself that in the moment. Number two, some more questions for you. So what are you getting out of this? Again, ask yourself that before you delve in, and don't look back. Number three, the action here is thinking about, okay, do I actually even want to genuinely do this or not? So again, it's a question for you to ask yourself. But actually, if the answer to that is no, then don't do anything. That's the action, okay? And that's okay. That's totally cool if you don't. And then number four, I think just to remember that, people will accept you saying no to something when they understand it. Okay. So take the opportunity to explain, if you feel safe to do so, where you're coming from, why that might be, in a really cool, calm, and collected manner. And often, a lot of the time, people will accept that because they understand where that no is coming from. So give it a try and see where that gets you. We also have some self-coaching questions to ask yourself. So we're quite question heavy on this episode in terms of top tips and self-coaching questions, but we love a question as coaches, so we're going to go with it. So number one, what situations trigger your desire to prioritize others' needs over your own? And why do you feel compelled to seek their approval? Number two, how do you feel when you say no or set boundaries, and what fears or beliefs arise in those moments? Number three, how can you practice asserting your own needs more confidently? And number four, what can you do differently to break your people-pleasing cycle? So don't worry if you're listening to this on your dog walk, your drive to work, and you're thinking, I can't remember all of these. That's totally cool. Don't worry, because all of these tips and self-coaching questions will be on our Instagram page at the Coaching Cast following this episode going live. So you can have a look at them there and practice using them in the moment.
We will have a new episode for you next month in early November, and we have a guest joining us for this episode when we're going to be talking to Ed Fraser, the parent money coach. So it's going to be an episode looking at and talking about more around finance and money. So a hot topic, a challenging topic for many of us, one I know that probably gives a lot of us a bit of the ick. So yeah, it'll be great to have Ed here to talk to us about it.
It will indeed.
CBBs, we know you're super busy, but it would mean the world to us if you could rate, review, and subscribe to the Coaching Cast wherever you listen. It takes seconds and it's free to do. Or you could tell one person in your life who you think this podcast might help and just help to pass it on. So send them a link or a specific episode, share our website with them, our Instagram page. It would really help people to find us more easily and to support the podcast.
We like to end each episode of the Coaching Cast with our personal song recommendation, giving you energy and motivation as you launch into the next part of your working day. It's my choice this week, and I have chosen Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars, the song Die With a Smile, because I just actually really enjoyed this song. I really loved it. I thought, I'm not going to go with that. I'm not going to overcomplicate it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think that's generally why we share the songs we do, because we like them. So there's no more meaning behind that. Bruno Mars, is he having a comeback? I feel like he dropped off the face of the planet. He's back. He's back. Cool.
Right. On that note, see you next month, CBBs. And remember, you've got this.